What's up, guys? It is Chris back with another watch video, and as you guys know, I love to compare watches, and here is another watch comparison, and this is one that I probably should have done a while ago. This is the Christopher Ward C60 Trident Pro 600 meter dive watch versus my SBDC061. Now, this watch is on loan from Christopher Ward, as you guys know. And I think it is one of the better micro brands out there that you can purchase currently. And it retails for around $1,000. If you want to get it on this bracelet with discounts, you can get it around $900. The SBDC061 by Seiko, or the Baby Marinemaster 200 as it is commonly referred to, is around $1,100 retail. However, you can get them on a discount as well. You can get these anywhere from between $700 and $900, so around the same ballpark as the Christopher Ward. Now, these watches are very similarly spec'd, except for a few slight differences. So I'm going to go through some of the similarities of the watches. I'm going to go through some of the differences of the watches, and then I'm going to pick a winner at each level of watch category, I guess. Like I'm going to do bezel action. I'll say dial, which one I think that has a nicer dial, or bracelet, clasp, things like that. But just getting right into it. So they are similar. Obviously, they are both dive watches. You can get this in 42 millimeters. This is the 40 millimeter. This is a 44 millimeter. So there is a size difference. Obviously, you have screwed in crowns. This has a crown at the 3 o'clock position. The Seiko has the crown at the 4 o'clock position. This gets a ceramic loomed bezel. This does not. This gets an aluminum insert. It has a very nice insert in it, actually. I really do like the way it looks. However, obviously, the scratch resistance and durability of ceramic cannot be beat. But if you want something to wear down over time and gain patina, obviously ceramic will not do that, and you will do that with the aluminum bezel on the Seiko. You get sapphire crystal on both of them with AR coating, applied indices on both of them. You get a lot of lume on both of them. You get Lumibrite on the Seiko. Lumibrite on Seiko is awesome, and it is liberally applied on this watch. And on the Christopher Ward, you're getting some incredible lume as well. Super Luminova, but it is very liberally applied, so it is very, very bright. We will do a lume comparison at the very end of the video. So as I mentioned, 44 millimeters on the Seiko, but it does wear smaller than that. You can get this in a 42, a 38, and this is the 40. So really, the way it wears is really up to the person who's purchasing the watch itself. This wears like a 42 millimeter, so if I was comparing this to the 42 millimeter version of the C60, that would probably make a little bit more sense, but for these purposes, obviously, I have the 40 millimeter. Thickness, now, they are basically the exact same thickness. You get a Sellita movement and 600 meters water resistance in the Christopher Ward. In the Seiko, you get 200 meters water resistance, and you get the 6R movement. So if we're comparing movements, I would probably go with the Sellita movement because it's a little bit more high-end, it's a little bit more expensive. The 6R is no slouch, however, it is not as accurate as the Sellita movement, especially through my tests of these watches. I've realized that the Sellita movement in this is a little bit more accurate than the Seiko 6R15. The 6R35 should be a little bit better, which the newer versions of this watch are getting. However, for this comparison, I only have the 6R15. And as I mentioned, they are similarly thick. And there is a lot of really nice finishes on both of these cases. You get Zerachu polishing on the Seiko, some polishing on the clasp, brushing throughout the bracelet, and polishing on that bracelet. Both get push pins for their bracelets, so nothing too crazy. But the cases on them, I think it's a wash, in my opinion. Inserts, I would probably go with the bezel inserts. If we're talking about bezels, I would probably go with the Christopher Ward, only because it's more durable long term. Bezel action, I also would go with the Christopher Ward. However, they have very similar bezel action. Just a little bit tighter and a little bit quieter on the SBDC061. but it is really good. There is bezel alignment issues on this watch. Of course, there are no bezel alignment issues on the Christopher Ward. You have a blue glossy dial. You have a flat black dial on the Seiko. I actually would go with the Christopher Ward's dial in this situation, only because you have better applied indices. They are deeper and a little bit nicer. The applied indices on the Seiko are a little bit shallower, but I do like the placement of the Seiko at the 12 o'clock. I like how the dial is laid out on the Christopher Ward, but I just think it looks a little bit more traditional on the Seiko, and I'll go with the Seiko in this situation. Case back, not that it really matters. Of course, the Christopher Ward has a nicer case back. It's a little bit nicer. It's like a nicer finish to it. It's stamped. It looks a little bit nicer. Really not that big of a deal, but like I said, it is a 600-meter dive watch. They both get screwed in crown, screwed in case backs, but the Christopher Ward is 600 meters somehow, while the Seiko is not. Not that I'm going to be diving to even 200 meters, but bracelets are actually very similar. They're sort of like oyster bracelets, 3-link oyster bracelets, and I have to say it's pretty much a wash except for the clasp. So the clasp on the Christopher Ward is just nicer. Both of them are milled, and they both look really nice, and they both function really nice. However, you get quick adjust on the Christopher Ward. You do not get that on the Seiko. You get some micro adjust on the Seiko. You do not get that on the Christopher Ward, but you do get it through that quick release, that quick micro adjust. So I would definitely go with the clasp on the Christopher Ward. The bracelet itself, it's pretty much a wash. The Seiko is just a little bit nicer, I guess, finishing wise. You do get polished on the side, which I really like. It looks really good on this watch. So maybe I would go with the Seiko. Bracelet wise, clasp wise, I would go with the Christopher Ward. Case wise, again, that is kind of a wash. I really like the finishing on both of these cases. If I had the 42 millimeter version of the Christopher Ward and I was comparing both of them, maybe I would go with the Seiko just because I like the sides of the Seiko and the way it fits. And the finishing is I've had this watch for a while and it really is held up. It has a hard coating on it. It really hasn't scratched very much. I've worn the hell out of the watch. Screwed in crowns, you do not get a signed crown on the Seiko, so that's a ding towards the Seiko. Of course, you get a very nicely signed crown on the Christopher Ward. I'll throw both of them on my wrist so you could see. Quickly though, today I am wearing the About Vintage. This is the Turtle, just a really cool Mecha Quartz watch, kind of different from both of these. This is a 40 millimeter watch as well. Really beautiful dial on here, textured green dial, very cool. I'll be doing a full review of that coming shortly. But here is the Christopher Ward on my wrist. It looks great, and this is a very comfortable watch as well, I have to say. I've been a fan of Christopher Ward. I've never really had one in for review. I got this in and I really fell in love with it. It became one of my favorite micro brands. Now there is just one other elephant in the room. Seiko has a history, and that is something that always comes up in my videos, in the comments, of course. Seiko have a long history of making dive watches. They've been making dive watches since the 60s. And this is sort of a reissue of one of those dive watches. It's a good looking watch, and the heritage, you have to take that into account when you're talking about brand. If you do not care about that, then honestly, I would probably go with all things being equal, and that being price, I would go with the Christopher Ward. The Seiko's just a little bit less expensive if you buy it on the gray market. And I don't think you can go wrong with the Seiko at all, in my opinion. You do get bezel alignment issues, so that's definitely something that you need to consider. But all in all, I think these could sit next to each other in a collection, and I say this a lot. But if I was comparing these both to something like a Tissot C-Star 1000 on a bracelet, these both would win over that watch, in my opinion. It's tough to say, looking at them right now. If this was in 42 millimeter, I think I would go with the Christopher Ward based off of specs, but the feel of the watch, the fit, finishing, quality of both of them are on par. They're equal. If you're considering price and history, then you would have to go with the Seiko. And obviously I own the Seiko. I want to own the Christopher Ward. I can't own every watch out there, but I'm trying to, obviously. Definitely equal bang for buck, in my opinion. Really, this is a tie, and I would go to the store and I would try and buy both. It would be a really hard decision between the both of them. The Christopher Ward, you have to pay import duties if you are buying it from Christopher Ward. That is another consideration. You could buy them on the gray market, but there are very few on the gray market. You would have to buy it used. So these are all things that you need to consider. Again, a really awesome comparison, really awesome watches, really a dynamic duo of value dive watches. Two of the best value dive watches that you can buy, in my opinion, hands down. It's more a decision between which one you like aesthetically more, or if you want to save a little bit of money and go for something with a little bit of heritage, then you would go with the Seiko. If you are looking for specs and equal or better quality or similar quality to the Seiko, and you don't care about the history and you're willing to spend just a little bit more money, go with the Christopher Ward. It's really a wash, in my opinion, anyway. So lume, definitely a strong point for both of these watches. The only disadvantage I would say here is for the Seiko, because the Seiko does not have a lumed bezel. Christopher Ward have lumed the bezel. There is tons of lume on the bezel. There's tons of lume on those indices and hands. However, I would say the LumiBrite is brighter on the dial, the indices and hands of the actual Seiko, but since there's physically less lume, it's just appearance-wise, it is less bright than the Christopher Ward. So if Seiko decided to actually lume their bezels, it would be incredible, and I think they would be a winner every time with a lot of lume battles, but they don't do that typically, so there you go. I mean, they're not going to win. I would say that the Christopher Ward in this situation has better lume and probably more practical lume, also because of the lumed bezel. Anyway, please tell me what you think of these watches in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Please follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is WatchChrisBlog. I have some links in the description. Those links are to Amazon. If you buy anything through those links, it helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. However, I very much appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you guys in the next video.